live. This is The Human Condition. I'm Vince Orlando.
I'm Sean Davis.
I'm Steve.
Did I throw everybody else off the new seating arrangements?
I didn't know which order we were going.
Throw a monkey wrench in the program. And this is a good time to throw a monkey wrench in the program, too, because we're talking about habits today. The power of habit. You know, I actually, when I was putting that little snippet together, that little blurb, I didn't even realize that a book that I'm reading right now, I haven't even got a chapter into it. Somebody gave it to me as a gift. It's actually called The Power of Habit. It's so far it's a really good book. It's a great book. But I've known for a long time the power of habit in either direction, either positive or negative. Addiction is a habit. At the end of the day, that's what it is. It's a compulsory go-to mechanism that can lead you down the wrong path. Typically does lead you down the wrong path. Hopefully, in the end, it exposes you to a greater path. But it's a compulsive behavior that becomes second nature after it's practiced for long enough. On the flip side, habit can be extremely powerful and beneficial for you to, and for me, the discipline of writing 3 pages a day as a writer. That's going to get me to the end goal, right? I want to complete this book. I want it published this year. Well, if I'm not putting in that 3 pages a day, then there's a problem. The problem with habit is typically you have to force yourself into the habit through discipline. It's not the case with negative habits. It seems like it's much easier to fall into negative habits, which provide instant gratification, which is it's a human thing, right? This is what humans do. This is what kids do. This is in the marshmallow test that we've talked about. I think on several episodes we talked about when in the marshmallow test, for people who haven't heard us talk about that. It's in the 70s, I believe. They did this marshmallow test. So what they would do is they would take this control group of children and they would set them in a room, and they would put a marshmallow in front of each one of the kids. The adult would say, well, I'm going to leave the room in 10 minutes, for 10 minutes. If you can eat this marshmallow, but if you don't eat this marshmallow, when I come back, you're getting 2. So they would monitor these kids on camera when they left the room. And it's adorable when you see the kids reacting to this marshmallow, and they're sitting there, they're staring at the marshmallow, and they're doing all these different things. Some kids can't take their eyes off it. There was only roughly, it was between 10 and 15% of the kids that were able to not touch the marshmallow. And those kids were rewarded. So the man who did this study, it was one of the control kids, was his daughter, and he would always ask his daughter, just out of curiosity, hey, how is such and such doing in school? All these kids went to the same school. And the kids who didn't touch the marshmallow and were rewarded with the second marshmallow, all of them were testing higher. They were better at homework. They were more popular in school, not because of the way they looked or anything like that, but just because they were better at being friends. And so he went on to do this lengthy study into their college years, and they were just more successful. The kids that weren't able to, what it boils down to is our ability to delay gratification. So the kids that weren't able to delay gratification, they didn't do as well, and a lot of them wound up falling into addictive behavior patterns. So I thought that was really interesting, because it would make sense then that you would fall into patterns easier where instant gratification is the dangling carrot.
Can I go ahead and have a disagreement with you already?
You can, yeah.
So in your intro, you're talking about habits, and you said, I think the key phrase here is that good habits are hard to form, bad habits are easy to develop. And you said because, that there's a sort of a reward. Well, anyway, addiction and habits are totally different things. And I think on one hand, if it has to do with your reward center, it's more of an addiction. Whereas if you just do it out of habit and there's no reward to it, it's a bad habit.
Well, I'm glad you bring that up.
Smoking a habit to you?
See, I think it starts as a habit, but it becomes an addiction. Because eventually your brain gets rewired to feel a reward when you have the cigarette.
So
Whereas at first you're doing it because you're cool. You're cool. You're cool and it looks cool.
So addiction,
I'm going to chime in, and I'm glad you brought that up. because
medically
there's a study that's been-
speaking, addiction is a disease, right? Now, let's say in my early drinking career, I used alcohol to go to sleep. Had a bad problem, had a lot of social anxiety, had just anxiety in general.
Self-medication.
So I was using it as self-medication.
Right.
Before I used it as social stuff. I was taking like a couple shots out of my dad's Nikolai vodka, and I was in 6th, 7th grade. A couple shots would put me down, and I would do that probably not every night, but at least 4 nights a week, something like that. Now, to me, that's a habit. You know, is there substance abuse disorder in there? Probably some. But then once I got to 9th grade and drinking was more of a recreational thing, I think it goes into a whole level of physical dependency and all that other stuff. But like, I think our mind gets plugged into habitual living, like taking the same route to work every day, going to the 4 different places for lunch, a week, like you replay, the same scenario because it worked before. Like, oh, I took this route to work, but I think with the way that life is, and it's so systematic, because that's all that I think life really is a bunch of fucking systems. And to tell you the truth, I can't stand it. So I constantly do things to break habit, to break routine. Number one, just for my brain state alone, because it'll change my brain state just by doing that. It's just a different form of emotional regulation therapy. By changing up where I'm going, what I'm doing, making things unpredictable, switching up everything.
And I think that's, for me, definition-wise, I think that's the biggest difference between a habit and addiction. A habit, you notice it, like driving to work. You take the same one unconsciously every day, you go the same way to work. Very easy to fix that. You just notice it, then you take a different way.
Yeah.
Wake up one day and you go, holy shit, I'm addicted to liquor. A little bit harder to change that.
Well,
You're going to be fighting that for a long time.
There-
It's going to take a lot of energy to fix that. And it's not only going to be an emotional decision or a choice, it's going to be a brain thing. You're going to go through pain. You're going to go through physical dependence, right? That's the difference to me between a habit and an addiction.
Well, most
Yeah.
addictions are process. Most addictions
Starts
are
out,
process.
right?
No, all addictions are process.
Starts out as a process
Now,
or is a process.
I can speak from my experience, and because I've abused substances, can I say that I'm chemically addicted to anything? No. And that was when I would sit and
So you can be an occasional crack smoker.
well, I would never smoke crack, but I've done crystal meth out in L.A. and it was occasional, and it was just for it. And we're not going to get into what those reasons were, but it was when in Rome, when I was with the famous people that were doing it.
Because I've never seen a recreational crack smoker.
But we're talking about something different now. I don't know that there is one either, but I've met them in L.A. You know what I mean? I don't know what they do behind closed doors, but it didn't destroy them. But what I'm saying is, are there those that are chemically predisposed to a certain substance? Probably. I don't know what that is. So for me, anything that I've ever fallen into, it's been a behavioral pattern. And yes, if you fall into a pattern that involves a chemical substance that is overpowering, that will take a significant amount of energy to break free from. Still a habit. You have to fall into it for it to be relevant. If you don't fall into it, it's not relevant.
I think we have
Can't
to
become a
also
habit.
go into like the compulsiveness of the habit.
Well, addiction is need, habit is repetition.
Yeah, it was funny because there's like compulsive
I'm going
disorders.
to break down what habit is.
We were talking about compulsive disorders like maybe like a year ago, and the guy was like, "Well, how do you know it's a compulsive disorder?" And one of the clinicians was like, "Well, if it's causing issues, and he used the example like jerking off like 6 times a day. If you're missing work or doing shit to go jerk off 6 times a day, that's a compulsive obsessive disorder, and that's going to be an issue. Now, is that habitual? It can be.
Well, it is. It's very much a habit.
You know, but to rewire that, and it could be even also like some form of addiction too. You know, if it hits the pleasure center of the brain, which every single drug, alcohol, sex hits that spot, and dopamine's released. I like dopamine. Dopamine is good shit. The more I get of it, better I
See,
feel.
that's what I was going for at the beginning. Like an addiction is usually a reward thing, where you get a reward, a dopamine hit for doing a certain action, like smoking crack, like doing drugs or whatever it is. Whereas a habit, I have a habit of biting my nails. I don't get anything out of
But
that.
you do.
I don't.
You do. You don't
It's
know
annoying.
you do.
It's disgusting. I don't like it, but I don't even notice I've done it until it's over with.
So let me tell you what a habit is. And since the advent of fMRIs, this is fairly recent, 2008, when this, I can't remember the psychiatrist's name, but she was able to finally get sensors onto a rat's brains, 150 of them onto a little rat's brain. And they were able to run these tests on rats and able to watch the pleasure center light up. So a habit is comprised of three parts: comprised of a cue, comprised of routine, comprised of reward. That's what a habit is. Every habit has reward. It doesn't matter if you go into autopilot on your way to work, and say you fall into traffic. You know you're going to hit traffic every day, and there's those times where you just zone out. You don't even remember missing an exit, but eventually you get to work. Well, the reward is you get to work, but you zone out in the routine. So what they found on these rats is they would put them in the world's simplest maze, right? It's one direction to the chocolate. And at the beginning, the rats would dick around, right? And they thought the rats were really dumb. They would scratch the walls, and you know, you're thinking as a human, well, the chocolate's right there. It's right there. And the rats would maul around, and then over the course of time, after they would lift this wall and allow them this pathway to the chocolate, they would find that the rats began to get more habitual, and they would get to the chocolate faster. So based on that information, because at first you would see these spikes in activity in the rat, and then eventually it would get to the chocolate, and then you'd see the dopamine, the pleasure center, light up. So as the rats got quicker at getting to the chocolate, you would think that, okay, well, you just see this constant spike, right? It would be level. What they found was in the routine portion of the habit, all activity dropped. So there would be no brain activity. It was just basically non-existent because they fell into the routine. They got to the pleasure center quicker. And it's the same with any habit. Doesn't matter if it's biting your nails, doesn't matter what it is. If they put an fMRI on you, they would see that for some reason there's some kind of innate subconscious pleasure, something you develop. Maybe it was a way to get out of some type of anxiety situation. I don't know for you personally, but there was some kind of defense mechanism there in the biting of the nails that leads to a dopamine spike. Now, you don't know in the routine, unless you're really paying attention, what's generating this fallout of brain behavior into this habit. You know, for me, it happens at night. I'll watch it. This is the worst thing I do now to this day. Is I for whatever reason, if I get bored and I'm not paying attention, I'm gonna walk to the fridge and I'm gonna look for some kind of bullshit food. Now, I may have fruit set out all over the place and whatever, and I may have I work out 5 days a week, and I don't want to have a gut, right? But there's something in me to where if I'm not paying attention, I'm going for that chocolate if I got it. And I'll even set up things, you know, like I'll have a Reese's cup up in the cabinet that I'm not looking at, but I know it's there, and I'll allow for the reward at the end of my, whatever you want to call it, my autopilot. But what they've figured out, and what this book, The Power of Habit, talks about is, well, the way you break out a habit is not by having all of these consequences. You know that if you eat enough chocolate, you're probably going to gain some weight.
Well, why don't you not have the chocolate in the house?
Well, and because that doesn't even work. So and it's the same with an alcoholic not having alcohol in the house. You can still be a miserable motherfucker and pissed that you're not able to drink because you've prevented
So
yourself.
cookies was my go-to in the middle of the night for a long time, and still is, but I switch it up. So like I've been buying a little extra, like this garlic hummus
You said the key thing.
and the pita. So 2 a.m. come around. Would I like to have cookies? Damn right. What am I gonna have? Hummus and pita.
You switched it up, and that's the key. Now you take something which
You always gotta switch it up.
you got to put, you have to put a reward there. That's what they've learned, is that you have to have some kind of reward, because just saying the consequences are this, that's not enough.
There's no reward really except me eating.
But you're getting a reward. There's something there.
It tastes good to me.
And there's something, and then eventually the habit, it is a chemical too, because it will affect your brain, right?
Yeah.
Over time, eventually that will become habit. For me, it takes 3 days to fall into a habit. So if I fall out of the gym for 3 days, the fourth day I'm going to get up and I'm going to make an excuse not to go to the gym.
Scientifically, it's 22 days to begin a new habit.
60.
There's all kinds of, there's all kinds of different.
22
You're gonna find every
22
Yeah, there's all kinds
was what I heard the other night from some clinician. So if you want to start something different, like a healthy habit, it takes 22 days
before
to
you
get
start
locked.
doing it
I can tell you, for me, it's 3.
to get it locked in.
It's 3. If I can do something consistently for 3 days, it becomes second nature. Now that doesn't mean that I can't fall out of it, but I know for a fact, because I watch myself daily, so that I don't fall into this pattern of
You're talking about, like,
post-traumatic stress
working out?
disorder.
Talking about
Working out's a good one, but meditation too. Like if I fall off of meditation for 3 days, I did it today, so I didn't work out all week, and then I don't slack, but I can't go to the gym as much when I have the kids, so I didn't go Monday, didn't go Tuesday, didn't go Sunday. Today I woke up and for whatever reason I just didn't want to get out of bed. I was a little bit groggy, whatever, but I didn't want to get out of bed, and I found myself, I could always find something here, right, to distract myself. The second I made the decision to get out of bed, the second I stood up, all I had to do was stand up, and it was get out of bed. It was there was just this. It became second nature for me to go throw my gym clothes on and take my ass to the gym. There wasn't even a second thought
You
to
said
it at
you,
that point.
you missed it for like 5 days.
It was like 4 days. 4 days.
So the 4 days that you missed, you went to work.
I did other things with the kids,
You did
or
other
yeah,
things.
yeah, with the guy. It was.
You didn't just drop them off and say, "Listen, I got to go to the gym right now. I just realized that I didn't do it. Everything is stopping. I'm not going to work. I'm not taking the kids out. I'm going to give up all my money to get a cab right now and go get some of that workout."
No,
That's not an addiction. That's a habit.
addiction's a habit too.
Addiction is a compulsion where you absolutely have to need it, and if you don't have it, you're going to go get it that moment. We've all been addicted to things, right? I was addicted
Right.
to
I mean,
Vicodin.
would I
If I
say
didn't have Vicodin for 2 days, I was
Habit-
asking friends. I was
habit
trying to
becomes
find money for
habit
it.
becomes addiction when the kind, because all addiction is when it's a behavior that you want to stop, that you know you should stop, but you can't. So when the consequences become great to that extent, is that you can't stop it, then they'll label it addiction.
But you don't just
But
like,
it
wake
is a
up
habit.
when you have an addiction. You don't just wake up and say, "You know what? I just don't feel like doing some drugs
No, you have
today.
to work to get out of that
I just
habit.
don't feel like it. I just don't have the
Sorry,
time. I don't have
guys.
the-
I'm just gonna,
I'm just gonna go on and live my life
I'm
without
gonna
it
look
for
for a
few
job
days.
The point is, it's a habit. That's
Right?
all it
That's-
is a habit. It's and because just because the consequences are greater doesn't make it any less of a habit.
I don't want to take up the whole
'Cause there's
conversation with
ritual,
this,
like,
actually. I've been
involved.
splitting hairs about the definition. I think the truth is addiction underneath is a habit more generally.
Well, and that's
But
all we do is
habit-
play semantics.
Habit, yeah, semantics.
That's all it'll
to
be.
me, habit is not addiction. Addiction is not. Addiction is a type of habit. But I can't go the other way.
because they'll call it habit forming.
Well,
Some things are
and-
habit forming.
Right.
And it's what
the
it
fuck
is.
does that mean?
And once it
means that
becomes
if
an
I take
addiction,
it
the
for
consequences
more
are
than
greater.
22
Yeah.
days.
Right. At what point is an addiction?
I might have a problem with it.
Right.
You know.
And that's all the whole point is in that, which I found interesting with the rat scans of the brain, is that, well, we all know that there's a cue, which we'll call a trigger, right? That's what it is. It's a trigger. You get the trigger, then you fall into the routine, and once you're heavily ingrained in the addiction, well, the routine is second nature now. You know, and not in order to break out of that second nature habit, you have to do something. For me, not doing shit, not writing, it has become a habit. It's become a bad habit. Are there immediate consequences to it?
How's the
No.
mastermind?
The mastermind's good, but I still have to force myself.
Because you haven't made it a habit yet.
No, there's other things. You know what I mean? There's
Right.
other things that are which we could call addiction. I got to get to my
value.
office,
You know, the value is always going to be in there too.
Well, I don't have to get to my. That's the thing. That's where I can look at this and say, well, this is kind of an addiction because the sitting and taking 5, 10 minutes, 15 minutes in the morning to reflect and write in that book is so profoundly good for me. Yet I will make an excuse to go sit at my desk in my office of the company that I own, like I have to be there at a specific time. That's an addiction, right? That's some form of addiction. Now, it's not visible to anybody else, and you can argue that, well, it's your company. You should be there, right? There's a lot of things I can put up there, but it's still addiction in a way because what I'm doing is neglecting myself. In this, whatever this, I haven't figured out what that is and why I feel so compelled to be there. And maybe it's just that I don't want to sit down and write about myself. It might be that, you know, but to your point, it is a form of addiction because I'm engaging in a minor form of self-destruction. And I only say minor because it's minor to people outside of me because nobody else would ever notice it. But I notice it. You know, and when I don't sit down and write, I'm not going to sit down and write later that day.
Where does discipline come in?
Discipline is key. Discipline is key. And the interesting thing I found about and what I did read in this book, and I watched some talks with the guys, some TED Talks who wrote the book, and the interesting thing is that if you want to form a new habit, you have to have a reward on the other end of that habit. There has to be a reward. If there's not a reward, and Robert Downey Jr. said this, and that quote lived with me, and it still does. He said, it doesn't matter what consequences you put in front of an addict. It does not matter. There's no amount of consequences that's going to change their behavior for the long haul. It might do it temporarily to get out of jail or whatever, but you need a reason to live. If you don't have a reason to live, you can easily go and be a dry drunk, right? You can be you go into the program, you see people that are fucking miserable. They haven't touched alcohol or drugs in 20 years. They're fucking miserable. They're not happy. They're bitching all the time. You know what I mean? So if you don't have a reason to live, like something, a reward of sorts, it's not going to stick with you because it's not truly a habit. You know, and habit in the definition that was put on our page, that's the definition of habit. It's something that becomes second nature to you.
You know, that reminds me of that book that was really big in the 80s or 90s, 7 Habits of Very
Highly effective people.
Highly effective
Love it.
people, yeah. Coven.
Stephen Covey, that's the guy who, the picture that we got on our page, that's him, Stephen Covey.
So, yeah, I don't remember much about it, but I do know that it was goal-based. You know, before you set out to make a positive habit or a successful habit, you have to like kind of analyze where you're going with this thing.
Begin with the end in mind, he says.
Exactly.
That's something
Begin with
I've
the
been
end in
able-
mind.
yeah.
Begin with the goal and work back from it. And then, you know, obviously there's some other basic things. Obviously there's 7 of them.
Right. That's an extremely, you've read it, right?
I browsed it.
I read it when I was a kid.
It's an extremely powerful book. It really is. And it's where I learned of the concept of interdependence, where you don't want to be codependent, but you want to recognize value in your relationships with other human beings who don't drag you down, right? People that don't drag you down, who are also independent, but recognize the value in others, that's where you form strong interdependence.
Oh, that's what, yeah, he breaks it into independence, interdependence, and continual improvement, which is be proactive, begin with the end in mind, first things first, think win-win, seek first to understand, then to be understood, synergize, and then sharpen the saw.
Yep.
And growth.
Yep. Yeah, he's the man. Stephen Covey's the man.
1989, I remember it being sooner than that, but it really was that long ago.
See, and those concepts, they stand the test of time. This was prior to them being able to look into your actual brain and see how it lights up when you engage in a behavior that's been formed. It'd be interesting to see how your brain lights up, to get you on an fMRI and catch you in the act of biting your fingernails and see how
they've done it.
Well, I'm sure they have too. I mean, but it'd be interesting, right, to see that there is dopamine that's getting released somehow.
Is it dopamine? I know I say that a lot. Is it
I don't-
serotonin?
No, serotonin helps you go to sleep.
Dopamine is the addictive reward thing, but it's not the happiness.
Well, dopamine and serotonin are both part of the pleasure center. They're chemicals.
They're
released in
both
the
part of
pleasure
it.
center. Yeah.
But the
I knew
dopamine,
serotonin had to
the
do something.
dopamine is the
Yeah, that's
That's what keeps you
That's-
coming back.
that's like the insulin spike when you get the sugar.
Yeah.
You know, it's the dopamine. That strong release of dopamine. That's what keeps you coming back. And look, when we talk about these habits, when we talk about a chemical that is going to release dopamine to that extent, all it's doing is releasing more dopamine. It's a chemical, so it affects you in an immediate fashion. That's all it does. There's no magic to it.
No,
None
it's
whatsoever.
a snowball.
It's
I mean,
yeah,
it's
that's
the
it.
same thing as roller coasters. I mean, roller coasters will spike your dopamine.
Yeah, they do.
Casinos.
Casinos,
built
gambling.
for it,
Gambling is huge.
I really don't like Las Vegas. I've been there a handful of times. I had to go there for work alone once. That's different having to go alone.
So a lot of times in like certain things, like ritual comes into play along with these habits, like going to a casino, going by your favorite machine, doing all that stuff. You know, some people have patterns that they do when they go.
That's interesting.
Same
right
with smoking crack.
Yeah.
You know,
there.
going to
Gotta get in a certain
buy,
place.
you know, the
Yeah.
stem and the shit, and then to the dope house. Like, if you talk to someone in recovery about like their use, and it was very systematic. You know, there was definitely ritual involved, and it was definitely like, you know, it was just like the idea of going and buying a pack of dope and shooting up. There was a whole ritualistic thing about it, which made it, you know, that's the whole habit.
You know, and that's true because I would talk when I was in treatment. I would talk to people that were addicted to heroin, and it was crazy to me that they would form this weird relationship with the needle. And I heard stories about people shooting up water, and nothing that was going to get them high, but there was this needle addiction. And that was an addiction to the ritual.
That's
You know,
just
they-
like smoking and
Yeah.
the
Right.
hands to the face thing.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
like chewing your nails, like doing gum, like doing candy.
Or people that'll walk around. I knew this guy. He I don't think you know him, but we used to call him Uncle Carl. He lived down the street. And,
I remember Carl.
Remember Carl
Yeah.
and Brad and I just so
Elvis.
Yeah. So his entire life he couldn't drink because he was literally gonna die.
He
His-
fucked it up way back then.
yeah. So he would walk around. He would have cases and cases of non-alcoholic beer. The ritual of having this beer, and I'm sure there was something with the taste of it. I think it tastes disgusting, right? I never saw what the value was in beer, other than it could get you drunk, and it was a social thing. So I could never comprehend wanting to walk around with a case of something that wasn't going to have that effect and drinking it, but he did. He never went anywhere without his cases of non-alcoholic beer. It's ritual. There was a pleasure that maybe he didn't even possibly understand. I definitely couldn't understand it as an outsider, but it was habit. It was habit. It was ritual. And rituals can be habit forming. You know, for me,
I think there's a different end game with rituals than habits. Like habits are things that you do over and over and they become second nature, right? I think ritual, when I'm thinking about it, I'm thinking about baseball first because, you know, pitchers have their ritual every time before they throw, they, you know, do this twice.
Whatever-
and they
yeah,
go like
whatever it
this
is, yeah.
once. And it's because at one point in time they had a better game doing that. And they remembered all those things, and now they have to do those same things over and over to make sure that they keep having good games. And I think with the drugs and the beer and stuff, is you go through the ritual because you remember, okay, I'm having a good time, but I remember when I had a better time doing this one thing, this certain way. Having that beer, I had the best time of my life. So if I just recreate that over and over, maybe I'll keep having a better time than I am now.
well, it's also a lead into the habit. It's really what it
Yeah.
is. Or if you practice a ritual long enough, it can lead you to the habit. For me, there's a certain way in the morning I want to face east. When I did, it's ridiculous because if you think you go into space, there's no up, down, east, west, right?
The
Even though-
Muslims took care of that actually because
What's that?
the Muslims had to take care of that. They were going to have Muslim astronauts, and they said, "Well, what do we do? Because there's no West in space." And it is officially now. You just do your best to aim towards Mecca.
Right. So the idea is, the sun rises in the east, the energy flows through. Right.
Right.
That's the basic. But there is no direction in space.
And the sun doesn't actually rise anywhere. We're
Right.
turning.
Right. So, but that was the idea, right? It was a human idea.
Right.
So, but I still like to do it. It
Feels good.
Yeah, and I like to get that pillow out, and I like to sit on that pillow, and I do notice that sometimes I can use not having that, like if I'm on vacation with the kids and I don't have access to that pillow or the ability to face east without having to go out into the hall of the hotel or something like that, I'll use it as an excuse not to meditate. So that's an instance where I can look at a ritual and say, well, the ritual kind of guides me to this habit that's healthy for me. Or maybe I need the ritual because that's not yet a habit. So it helps to trigger something. It helps to trigger the reward. That's a reward, kind of. I get to sit in the direction I want to sit in on the pillow that I want to sit on, and it's rewarding because I don't know why. I would have to unpack that. You know what I mean? I don't know why, but I think in the same way you talk about, the crackhead that has a stem and they want to go get
Yeah.
there's some kind of weird reward in that. I don't know what that is.
I've wondered about this many times. What you brought up at the very beginning, actually. Why it's so easy. Why it's so hard to do something good, like form a good habit where every day I get up and I brush my teeth and I sit down and I write for a half hour and then I meditate for a half hour and then I go to the gym for a half hour or an hour. Why can't I do that every day? Whereas if I pick up a
'Cause you wanna
cigarette right
sleep
now,
in.
I'm just going to smoke
'Cause you wanna
cigarettes
sleep
all
in.
day.
Right, all
You
day.
wanna
It's
sleep
just
in.
going to be like
It's
that.
so easy. It's so easy to just smoke instead.
Yeah.
So the thing is, a lot of times you have to find what your body enjoys.
Yeah,
I
my
don't
body
like-
really wants cigarettes.
I don't like working out in the morning. Rarely do. Like people who work out at 6 a.m., God bless them. That ain't me.
That's me.
That ain't me.
I got to do it in
I
the morning.
can't do it.
I can't do it.
It's not. It's not. I don't lift well. It's not my power time. And I mean, I will lift at like 9 or 10. Like if one of my boys is like,
At night?
no, in the morning to meet me
Say,
at
I'm
the gym.
cooked by 6.
But to tell you
I'm
the truth,
done.
my power time is from 2 p.m. to around 7 p.m. Like I get to the gym in that frame time, had no problem. I'll work out a couple hours, I'll run, I'll lift, doesn't matter. Just because I'm stronger at that time, and I've had a meal, maybe two, things are different, not to mention I'm probably out of work or, I'm on a break from work before I gotta go back. It's just different.
Mhm.
It's just different.
I'm definitely not a morning person.
I'm not either, and it's,
Vinny's looking around like,
I'm
how?
not-
I love being up
some
in the
people
morning.
are, some
It's
people
weird.
are.
I just know that if I don't crack it in the head more in the morning, I know that because I guess it all depends on our daily lives and how they're structured, or how the lack thereof of structure. And I know that I need structure. I still need structure. I'm like a kid in that way because I've gotten away with so much in my life.
Well, they say
And
80% of the business deals are done before noon.
well,
So
I have heard
successful business people, tell you the truth, all the ones that I know, they're up at 4:30.
that's weird because I'm
You know.
usually up at about 4:30, 5 o'clock, and then this is a habit for me. I'll go to the phone and I'll look for something inspirational, and I won't move, and really I won't get out of bed unless it's to use the bathroom until I find something that puts me into a meditative state. When I'm really on my game, I'm going to get up from that state. I'm going to go down to my little meditation spot. I'm going to face east and I'm going to meditate for 10, 15 minutes. Then I'm going to come up, I'm going to brush my teeth, I'm going to throw on my gym clothes, and I'm going to go down, I'm going to grab a piece of fruit, and I'm going to hit the gym. And on my best days, I'm out of the gym by 7 in the morning. All that stuff is done on my best days. On my worst days, I don't leave for no reason. Like today could have been one of those days. I just did not want to get out of bed. And what I know for a fact about me is that all I have to do is stand up. Once I stand up, any grogginess that I feel, it's gone. Like it's. So I guess there is a resistance in me in doing what's good for me. Like you said, you know those things that are going to make your day better. You know what's going to make your day better. We have I think it's a built-in resistance. I don't know that it's built in. It's learned over time. I don't know what that is. but I know that the antithesis to you're habitual whether you like it or not. That's
We're
the
creatures
thing.
of habit.
No matter what, you're going to be habitual, and because it's easier to fall into bad habits, because I think the instant gratification has been programmed from a very young age, like the means to get that dopamine spike or whatever it is through chewing your nails or whatever it is that you get, because you get something. You consciously don't like it. I consciously can't stand when I don't get my ass out of bed when I know that I should. And now,
How long you been doing it?
Bite my nails? Probably
your
since
life?
I was a kid. Yeah, my whole life.
Yeah.
That I can remember.
and
Don't want to, but Shalane will catch me and she'll be, honey, quit that. I'm like, oh.
I didn't even know I was doing it.
I was just sitting there, I was in another world watching TV show or something, and here I am, like, it's disgusting. Hate it.
Why don't you grow them out?
I've tried.
Grow them out.
It's just so easy. So easy to just change things like that. But see, that it's become like what you said, like a compulsion.
Yeah.
See, that's an interesting one because you don't even know you're about to do it. It's so
Right.
second nature and it's part of you.
Right.
So there's nothing to prevent you from doing it in autopilot. It'd be interesting to try to track that behavior. Because that's what I do now. I'll look at. There's some times where I don't want to brush my teeth at the end of the night. It's rare that happens now, but in my bed it's far more comfortable than my couch. My couch is comfortable too, but there's a weird thing that happens in me to where it's a form of self-abuse, right? I don't want to do this thing that it's just you do it. It takes 2 minutes and your breath don't stink and there's all these and you keep the bacteria out of your mouth and the bed's more comfortable and I'm not going to wake up with a cramped neck but for some reason this little devil on my shoulder, whatever that is, wants to do everything in opposition to what's good for me. And when it's the little nuanced behaviors like brushing your teeth or going and sleeping in your bed or making the bed in the morning. Have you ever read that or you know the concept, right?
I do. I make my bed before I hop in
That's
the bed.
powerful. Like that's powerful. The
Well, I
first
have to.
accomplishment of the day.
Like
Get up and make the bed.
Hell,
No,
I do both.
I'm like when I wake up, first thing I do is go to the bathroom, and actually first thing I do is pray right when I get up.
That's powerful.
Then I'll go hit the book, then I'll go hit the mastermind stuff, and then I'll kind of like get dressed and everything and just put things together for my day, depending on the day. And I try to get out of the house relatively quickly and go to work, and that's just the way it is. I don't.
My first 15 minutes are like first time I open my eyes, it's usually before light, and my first thought is like, "Fuck, it's not even light out yet. I could probably get like, let me grab my phone. I could get like another half hour sleep.
Never happens.
I could do another half hour sleep. Do that weird, wakey, sleepy, horrible thing. I've done that for years, and it doesn't help, and it's awful.
Yeah.
But the last thing that I do before I get out of bed is say, I'm going to get out of bed. I'm starting at 10. Once I hit 1, I'm getting out of bed. And I've never lied to myself. Once I hit 0, I'm out of bed, whether I want to be or not. It helps.
I've been experiencing like a lot of. I've always had, since I got sober, I've always had some form of sleep issue. It comes and goes. One of the times right now is that it's just rough. I don't think I've had like a deep sleep in like a couple months.
Yeah, it's tough. That'll throw you into some fucked up habits quick.
Yeah.
I sleep really quick now. Well, I have for years because I've taken this blood pressure medication that makes me piss every 3 hours.
Yeah.
So I haven't slept more than 3 hours in a decade. So when I hit, it's maybe 10 to 15 minutes before I'm in the REM.
That's nice.
Yeah, that's
It's weird.
That's not weird. I mean, Einstein. Einstein never slept full nights. Einstein, was it Einstein or was it Newton? I think it was Einstein that would just work and work and work. But
And then
he
2 hour
would-
naps. That was
he would
Newton.
catch this, but I think it was Einstein who would put the spoon in his hand, and so he would hold the spoon, and he would fall into REM sleep, and then eventually, you fall into full REM, and there's some definitely neurological benefit to this. When you fall into REM sleep and you come right out of it, all you need is the REM. You just need to hit the state of REM, and then he would drop the spoon would hit the ground, It would jostle him out, and then he's off to the races. And that's how he slept. And I don't know how he slept at night or whatever. This is just what I've read, and who knows, right? But
Did you read about why we do REM sleep and why you need to sleep as a human being?
There's so many different studies, but yeah,
the newest one, last 3 years or whatever, they figured out that it's a chemical buildup throughout the day, some sort of plaque way back here.
that makes sense.
And when you sleep, your brain dissipates that. If you don't sleep, it keeps building up until, well, you can break. But it's some sort of build-up plaque during your wakefulness, and your REM sleep is what dissipates it. That's the latest one that I've heard, and there was quite a bit of research.
Well, and that would make sense because the dream state, right? The dream state is the breakup of that plaque.
That's why it's so random. I could follow that.
That would make absolute sense. I haven't read that study, but that's interesting though, because if I don't hit REM sleep, there are those nights. It's rare that where I go through I don't sleep, and I'll sleep, but it's broken sleep, and I never really hit REM. That's how you are when you're drinking, right? Just going out, you get drunk, you have a the hangover that you have the next day is as a result of that inability to hit REM. Because I don't think, when I was out partying back in the younger days, that was never good sleep. Never. It was never good sleep.
No.
No, I slept.
Because you still
Never mind passing out.
Yeah.
You know.
But I know, but you always woke up
You're
feeling like
exhausted.
shit,
Oh,
didn't you?
of course you did, but
Yeah.
unless you ate real good, you got wasted.
Real good, mean and greasy shit.
Yeah.
White Castle or
Yeah.
some Denny's,
We used
So
to
that's-
do Hardee's.
Hardee's.
National Institute of Health.gov.
That greasy shit was so good, it was so bad.
Frisco
for
Burger, man.
Sleep helps restore the brain by flushing out toxins that build up during waking hours. That's the results, and they've been
Can you
testing it
post
for
that
quite a while.
on our
Yeah,
page.
get that out there. Also helps with Alzheimer's plaques. They're finding out. So sleep. Yeah, that's
REM, just REM.
REM.
Yeah, just REM, hitting the state of REM.
It's really
You don't need to
interesting to
stay
think.
there for any extended period of time. And so that's interesting that you can go back to REM. Because people are lucky to get one state of REM through the night. Right? For me, once I'm up, I'm up.
Yeah.
If I'm up at 4:30, I'm not going back to sleep. I'm not even trying. I know it's not happening. Unless I have someone in the bed with me and she makes me lazy, then okay, then maybe.
It's your fault.
But
It's crazy how little
but it's
that you
but I
get.
like that, because I'm left to my own devices. Once I'm out of REM, I think that's interesting because I feel like I've released so much, and that's why I think I'm a morning person, is because I do hit a deep state of REM. I only need 3-4 hours. Like my max throughout the night is 5.
Yeah.
I don't think I ever get more than 6. When the kids are there, I'm on go until about midnight. Sometimes I'll go to bed at 10. It just depends on what the day was like, but I'm up at 4:35, like clockwork. The only time I'm not is if I'm falling into self-destructive patterns, meaning simple things like not meditating, I'm not writing, I'm not doing the things that I know are most beneficial to me. That's when things change, and I can
Because, like,
recognize those.
Do you feel like it's because you don't have like that contentment that doing those things that are good for you?
Yeah.
Like if you're not content, if you feel like you're lacking something, it's hard as fuck to sleep.
Well, I think I have this natural. It's not natural. It was built. There's something in me that wants to self-destruct. So when I'm not doing major things like drinking or doing drugs or chasing meaningless relationships with women, or when I'm not doing stupid shit like that, that's on the surface, like you talked about, the things that we call addiction, that we've labeled addiction, these habitual patterns that have gotten out of hand and now they're visible, right? When I'm not doing those things, my ego will try to find little small nuanced things like not brushing my teeth, like not going to bed, things that there's no immediate consequence to that on the surface. If I miss meditation that day, I'm not going to die. And if I miss it the next day and the next day, I'm not going to notice that really unless I'm paying attention. When those minor patterns of self-destruction, I call them for me because I know where I wind up if I don't engage in these practices, where I wind up is not good. So my entire existence now, from the moment I get up and I start to engage in these habitual patterns that are good for me, is to not fall back into the old patterns. And the only way I can do that is by looking at the nuances throughout my day. because it doesn't manifest itself in a major way anymore. It's been a long time since I've had the last PTSD bender I had was the drunk when I got that drunk driving 2 years ago. You know, that was the last one. And then prior to that, it was like once a year, you know, and then even the intensity, frequency, duration of these things had gone down through therapy and through other things that I was doing. So now I got to be extra careful in paying attention to my habits throughout the day. What type of patterns am I falling into? What type of rituals, even you could call it? Because if I choose to come in, and there's nothing wrong with watching TV and unwinding that way, but I do know there's a fine line between escapism and between me doing something that is enjoyable. Because if I got Friends on, which I don't even watch anymore, but if I just got some dumb shit, and no offense to Friends, but if I just got some rerun shit in the back of my, you know, just going on the TV for no fucking reason, and I got the Mastermind Journal over there, and I got my computer up there, and I'm done with the longhand of the book. And my goal is to put that thing out by the end of the year, and I'm sitting there scrolling through this while Friends is playing in the background. That's a fucking problem, you know? And to me, it's just as detrimental as I might as well be out there getting fucked up on drugs.
Well,
or
Terrence
alcohol.
McKenna always believed that television was the most addictive drug there is.
I can agree.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I can agree with
It's
that.
like it massages your brain, and just hours can go by, and you're like, wait,
You know,
what the fuck?
You
I
don't
had
have
all kinds of things I was gonna do.
Yeah, my
God damn it, Ross!
yeah, exactly. Or what is it like? Impractical Jokers. It's fucking funny, you know. But I've seen every one of them. You know, the kids loved it. I didn't even know what it was, but
you gotta change it up.
I'll catch myself with that just
There's
playing.
a
It
new
used to
love
be Family
connection.
Guy.
There's a new love connection.
Don't
on.
tell me that.
Love connection.
You're back in
You know-
2 and 2.
As you were talking that, the
Chuck
thing that
Woolery.
popped in my head was, it
you
seems to
youngsters.
me that you have to, as a person, as a functioning person in society and everything, you have to put a lot of will and effort into keeping
Absolutely.
things together, keeping things rolling forward, keeping an order to yourself and to your life. Because if you just sit around and let things happen, it will descend into chaos.
Well, Russell Brand, and this is
I was,
the waterfall.
I was sort of bringing, yeah, go ahead.
But is that what you were going? Like, there's this force, you know. Russell Brand
Chaos
said
and
this.
entropy I was going to go for, but yeah.
Well, we got to have a conversation. We should do an episode on entropy because I met this quantum physicist out out at the Conference for Consciousness and Human Evolution in London. Her book's amazing on entropy, and really entropy is a accumulation of information. Even though we view it as human beings as a degradation, as a fall into chaos, it's not. You've acquired more information. You take on a new state, but you're taking more information. I got to get that book to you. It's fucking amazing. Like when she said that, she said, I view the Big, not as the Big Bang, but the Big Breath. I was like, holy shit. That threw me. And now I'm thinking about that instead of what the hell were we talking about when you brought that up? Because we should have an episode on entropy.
Absolutely. So what I was bringing up is basically it takes willpower to
Willpower.
overpower the entropy of the universe. Things want to fall apart. There's books and books written about things falling apart.
So what
Waterfall you're going to bring up.
yeah, Russell Brand said the spiritual life is like you're in a rowboat and you're rowing away from a waterfall. You can do it, but it takes constant effort, right? Now, if you may need to take the paddle out, take a break. If you're not aware of that force, because you may be far away, but the force is still imminent, right? It's still pulling back at you, and that's not flow for some reason. You know what I mean? There's when we talk about flow, it's so easy to misconstrue being pulled into these faulty patterns, these negative patterns as flow, but it's not. It's something different. So when he said that, that just resonated so powerfully with me because it's like, okay, well, you got to put in constant effort because there is a force of the universe that's going to pull you back into old ways. What is that? It's our subconscious programming. It's the shit we didn't create this, you know, and there's different studies that'll say, well, your personality is formed by 3, your personality is formed by 7. Somebody will say 5. But the one that I found that really resonated the most was 3rd trimester till 3 years old, your personality is formed. Give or take a year and, you know, whatever. But your personality is formed. Auto-programmed, like a computer, your operating system's been put into place. So in that regard, it's not flow. when you lift the paddle out, when you stop the effort into the spiritual existence, because in our dualism, from the time that we're born as spiritual beings having a human experience, or let's just say quantum systems in this human experience, right? Now confined to the five senses, but quantum systems. So even from a scientific perspective, we're something different than what this is, right? Our true nature is something completely different. E equals mc squared. We're energy. We're frequency. That's what we truly are. And then this has been manifest. Some would say through consciousness, whatever. But we're constantly working against that if we're lucky enough to know we need to, you know. And that's the thing, is that we're always working against shitty patterns.
That's also the burden of being a human, right? Like there's no other animal that does that.
No.
Or has to worry about
No.
it. Like a raven doesn't care if it does bad things.
Or if it dies,
Or
it's
if
not even thinking about it.
It doesn't
It's
even
not
know that
contemplating
it's
it.
going to die one day.
Yeah, it's not a
It has
thing.
no idea.
Yeah, it just does eventually.
I was reading an interesting book called Thoughts on Existence or whatever. I don't remember who it's by right now, but one of the very first thing he says is, this is a philosophical book and I want to talk about the definition of philosophy. And he says, you know, people sit around and say philosophy is this, it's, you know, being able to reason, it's being able to talk and argue, it's looking for meaning, right? He says simply, you know, if you read enough philosophy, all philosophy is concerned with the meaning of death. Because that is the question everybody's afraid to talk about. Some aren't, most are. It's the thing you don't want to think about. It's the thing that you don't want to go through, unless you're, you know, spiritually inclined and you're not worried about it. But that really got me thinking, you know, is death sort of like this entropic thing? Is it things falling apart, or is it things actually following the pattern?
The true nature.
The true nature.
The true.
I'd-
See,
you know,
you would say is
I'd like to get back to that, like maybe next show.
we'll have to come up with a nice write up for that to
Entropy
try
and
to break
death.
down.
I'd like to
entropy.
talk about entropy and death specifically.
Yeah, I'm game for that. Drop comments or send messages if you got it. But I like that, because that's something we could talk for 10 episodes or forever on, because it's true. Like, we're the only species that has the ability to contemplate our own demise, and that's scary shit. It's not for me.
It's self-will. We're the only things that have self-will. The dog doesn't have self-will.
No,
Dog
absolutely
just
not.
has God's will.
But I thought I'd mention it because we're talking about habits, right?
Yeah.
And I think one of the underlying reasons that we have a lot of habits and addictions, whatever it is because we're afraid of death. Like you have a habit of going a certain way to get home because you know that it's safe. Because you're afraid to die.
I think it's a normal thing for most people to avoid things that are going to jeopardize my life.
And on the other hand, you can get addicted to things that absolutely will kill you eventually, but you're going to do it anyway. And going back to my original thing, that's what I think the difference is between habits and addictions.
I mean,
I
and
brought it all the
again,
way full circle.
and again, it's semantics, because all an addiction is a habit that's gotten out of control, and there's dire consequences. That's all it is.
Right.
You know, at the end of the day. But yeah. So anyway, we're getting the 2-minute warning mark, but it's true though. That's why we do
Absolutely.
this shit, so we can. There's other people thinking that, right? So if we're sitting here and we're just talking one concept and we're not throwing things out there to unpack the shit, well, what's the point of this? Like, we could talk about what we agree on all day, and there's
That's
no
not very interesting.
no, there's no relevance to it. I mean, you know, we can. I just don't think there is. I think it's important to have other people. I have some great friends that are Trump supporters. I can't for the life of me wrap my brain around what that is for some of them, but there's some that I do. I'm like, I get it. I see why, but it's because I seek to. In the same way I seek to break these negative behavior patterns.
Well, at the end of the day, we're all humans. And at the end
We
of the
try,
day,
right?
no matter who you vote for, we're still going to be living next to each other and doing things for each other. So when it comes to political stuff and political divides, don't hate people
Or
because
even
of
this.
what they believe.
Even this, you know, because we can disagree on the, you know, we can fall into semantics and disagree and get stuck in the fucking semantics.
Yeah.
And then the whole episode winds up being all we're doing is we have different definitions of this thing, and now nobody benefits, right? You know. So anyway,
Open-mindedness, you know, is always crucial for human existence. You know, that's
happy human existence.
That's
Human
why there's
existence
so
free of
much
suffering.
division, is because like Trump supporters or however it is going on in the country, you know, there's just been like a lot pulleys on the fear
Dopamine.
strings,
Well, the dopamine too.
and then next thing you know,
And tribalism.
you got, you spewing some shit. And now you got, where's mine? All the entitlements. People are very entitled, and so like if you fuck with my entitlement, you gotta go. There's not enough for all of us.
Well, and
That
protected.
whole lack and limitation thing is alive and well in America. That's how most Americans live. By what am I not getting, and how much do I not have, or I'm going to spend the money that I really shouldn't afford. I'm gonna go get a new iPhone, even though I ain't got no food in the fridge, and my credit cards are about to be maxed out. But I'm gonna get that. I'm gonna get that iPhone.
Get yours.
I gotta have it.
Are we at the end of? All right, we got to wrap it up.
I'm good.
Yeah, I'm good.
I'm good too. Have good habits. Make a habit out of sending us more messages and keeping us on track with the subject matter, what you want to hear, what you want to discuss. Give me condition. We're out. See ya.